Hi, everyone. Welcome to this next edition of Christine and Guests. These are formats where I invite some of my friends who are movers and shakers in the world of food and agriculture to have an informal and hopefully lively and inspiring chat about some of the disruptive change coming into this space and some of the exciting phenomenons that we are seeing. So it is my pleasure to introduce Shuang today, who is based actually in Shanghai at the moment. And we are going to talk all about blockchain, which is really, really interesting because, I've spent my career actually in agriculture, 20 plus years. And I actually do pride myself on understanding a lot of the, new technologies coming into, change the name of the game. And blockchain is one that I have to admit, I still have to get my head around. I mean, I think I understand it at a conceptual level, but really I have to say that's where it ends. So I'm really looking forward to diving into this discussion today to learn all about blockchain and its potential in agriculture to make our food, more transparent and safer, and, also to empower farmers, because I understand it can play a role in that regard too, to make sure, that farmers are getting their fair share of the cut in the value chain. So lots of stuff to discuss, but maybe I'll pause here and let you introduce yourself.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Shuang. I work for Plug and Play Venture. We're early stage investors for different areas. Sorry, can I do that again?
Yeah. Please, yeah. And team.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Shuang. So happy to join today's talk with Christine. We're good friends. We know each other for a long time, and now finally, because we're connecting this way. I work for Plug and Play Ventures, so my background is also in agricultural. I studied it, and I also had a farm before. I was an entrepreneur for a short time period, and then I switched my kind of path to become an investor in the space. Talking about Plug and Play, we're actually based at Silicon Valley, and we have 35 global offices around. And I'm based in Shanghai at the moment because of the pandemic. But it's super interesting because having the background of studying agricultural and learning more about technology, and also looking at different agriculture system, both in US and in China, it gives me I should say a solid background to talk this topic, but also just a background overall to understand what's the technology application in this specific industry. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, super interesting. And indeed, I mean, we have known each other for a long time. And the last time I saw you, we're going to do a quick shout out here to Henry Gordon Smith and his team in agritecture, because we were in Atlanta at Aglanta. And so that's what I love actually about this world of food and ag innovation is like we see each other, all types of different places around the world. I'm a big fan of Plug and Play. Shout out to everything that they're doing. And indeed, you're doing some really, really like interesting stuff in this space, like uniquely you, because you have the farming background, you have the entrepreneurial background and the investor background. So you really are bringing, and of course, like China, US, Silicon Valley, like there's just like so much that you can offer. But let's dive into the topic at hand, blockchain. Can you like explain in the most basic general terms, like what is blockchain and how is it being used in food and agriculture?
Yeah. So it's the question that I explained so many times. So I feel like I'm more confident right now to simplify a lot of the terms. Because blockchain technology, fundamentally, it's an infrastructure. It allows all the different data points to be distributed everywhere and hold records that make the records won't be changed in the future. So in a more simple term, it's an infrastructure where you storage your data. And also it's a trust. It's like you're building Legos. That's where I use my metaphor,
the block.
Yeah, you got all the blocks, which each block has its own information. But if it's a Lego, you can't change it. If you build a shape, you build something everybody is watching you to build that Lego. It's in a public view, basically, or I should say, it's limited to those people who's in the blockchain, that they can know, okay, what has been built and what information has storage. So I think that's the most simple version.
Yeah, and I mean, because a lot of that data, if I understand correctly, has been stored previously in like Excel sheets or even paper records. And so blockchain is like a way to digitize that, but also ensure that, you know, corruption, which is rampant in all industries and also in this industry, doesn't happen, right? Because it's like validated data, and a lot of people are assuring that. So like, what kind of data though is stored on this? I mean, is it financial data? Is it, what are people using it for?
It doesn't limit it to certain type of data. The core technology was actually the encryption. So basically, the way how they make sure it's a secretive, and it's tamper resistant. So the core thing is actually how they change. You know, like for computer language, all you see is 0101 and 1010. So it doesn't matter that, like, you can storage, like, for example, specifically for the food industry, it could be like temperature data, it could be like financial data, it could be like transportation, or something else. Like it really depends on what kind of system that you build. That's very customized for food system. So
like when we have these complex supply chains, like, so a farmer grows his food and then basically hands it off to a transport company, and the transport company, I guess, would, you know, that data of like the date it's picked up, the temperature, the whatever information, the weight, etc., is recorded at this point. Then along, you know, each touch point, I guess there's more data that's collected and validated, and it helps to make sure there's not like a corruption along that supply chain, correct?
I think your understanding is correct, and there's a lot of things that they can change or kind of customize, but the basic idea was that each critical points, or we call it knot, like you can have a special points that creates all the data and then upload the data to the distributed network. But yeah, I think you got it. You know.
Well, yeah, like I said, at the conceptual level, but to help me even, and also our viewers, to understand like the practical application of this, can you like give maybe a couple of examples of how blockchain is being used in food, in the food system?
So there's like I can give two examples. The first one is, we all know that Walmart has been working really hard to push their initiative to have a almost like a blockchain certified a grower system that they can track their produce, where it comes from, and what practice that grower has been used. So when they implement that, they work with one of the dominant like produce grower, and they set up they were monitor the weight, the temperature, and they have this whole digitalized data recording system to facilitate it, and then to upload the data. So that was very specific, because I think Walmart wants to build the brands and build the entire, like, trust the system upon their blockchain efforts, which is like they're the first. But you know, this is very specific to this case. But there's another startup that's doing blockchain financing. So they're utilizing, you know, like if you're shipping your like, let's say there's a commodity trading activity happening, and then they're shipping they have a container shipped from China to US, and then while you have the container on the sea, you may have a shortage of money, and then this company steps in, and because they can prove that your container is actually like traveling to the US, so they actually financing that company. So it's so that's another application that basically, because the data and the whole trip was kind of recorded. So it's like, okay, like, the container left from one harbor, and the container will arrive to the other side of the world in few days. So for that few days, you can give them financing options. So that's a really cool application too.
That's super interesting. So like, something that's going on in my mind about blockchain, I know that like this kind of all really started with Bitcoin, right? Like the currency. And so the applications that you're describing, and like the way even I described it, is based on this premise that there's like people who are like manipulating data, or there's some type of corruption or something like this, right? That you're trying to solve for. Is that like just a rampant issue in our food system, that people are like, misrepresenting in data? Like what, like, is it that bad, or is it coming to solve like a new type of problem?
I think it's a side benefits that once you're using this type of technology or this infrastructure, that you have a more solid like ground, like everybody can understand, and also like everybody that's involved can be ensured that, okay, like the things that you're seeing is as it is. But I don't think it's that new, or that's something because our system is so bad, so we need something to almost like monitor it. I don't think that's the case, because you have to understand, especially it comes to financing. Like traditionally, when we don't have all those tools, when we don't have like different type of like methods to leverage the capitals, people are basically, if they have certain amount of money, they use it, and they can leverage the financial tools. But now we have more tools available to get the financial institute to get involved. So I think it's just another technology that can be leveraged.
Well, and one of the things that I've seen a couple of use cases around have been like exactly that, like how we can, the farmer, for example, is using highly sustainable practices, right, and on their farm, which often lead to like that farmer incurring more costs, right, because it might be more labor intensive or more data collection, et cetera, that's happening to show climate change mitigation or show water use efficiency, et cetera, or biodiversity preservation. And so the blockchain can like help ensure that the work that they're doing, right, is transparent to the end buyer, and they can like actually be rewarded monetarily for taking those efforts. So that's also, I think, like that's the empowerment side of it, not just like we're stopping people from being corrupt, but actually like we're helping encourage farmers to do things so that they can get rewarded for it. And isn't there something too where like contracts, and I guess this is maybe more on the like negative side, but sometimes like contracts aren't honored, right, in the agricultural supply chain. So this is another way to ensure like when the transaction happens, like boom, that farmer or that person in the supply chain is automatically paid, right?
That's another thing that's coming, the benefit from this system, which is a smart contract. Smart contract, which means there's different interpretation, but when we were talking about it, as you mentioned, it's automatically triggered. So, like if you know that we usually like there are people involved, like they have to confirm, like they maybe check a paper and say, okay, this shipment or where this container is arrived, and then we need to pay the other party. But now once it arrives, I can automatically just trigger that motion. And then the same thing, like for example, we all know that milk is milk is very sensitive.
Yeah,
I should
yeah,
say, especially fresh milk. You
yeah.
want to maintain the low temperature all the way through the supply chain. And if there are people who's doing, who's not really compliance, you maybe you just lose that information. But if something is automatically triggered, for example, as long as you turn on the cold ship, what is it called, the freight,
Yeah, yeah.
where the truck, refrigerated trucks, all those sensors can be linked, and they can become independent data points that they just automatically upload to the cloud, and then it's visible. Like
That's great.
nobody needs to
Really,
check it.
yeah. So you don't have to have manual checks. You literally can
Yeah,
see every step of the way. Has the temperature been maintained, et cetera, which of
yeah.
course leads to outcomes we care about as,
Mm-hmm.
consumers and TFFers, which is like reduced spoilage, higher
Yeah.
quality, at the
Mm-hmm.
end,
Mm-hmm.
i.e. less waste. That's super cool. So it sounds like there's like a convergence. It's like IoT, with the kind of like
Yeah.
tech sensors, all of these kinds of things. So that does sound like daunting for emerging economies, perhaps. Does
Mm-hmm.
this have a play in, non-developed countries? Do
So it's very it's a really good question, by the way. I think, especially in China, I've talked to many entrepreneurs here in the mainland China, and when they want to ensure something, for example, organic foods, because once people use the label organic foods, it's automatically has a premium price, and
right.
when the market is so when the market is booming, a lot of people want to enter the markets, but they don't have the proper certification. And now some of the technology providers are saying, okay, why don't we just have this like QR code? Like have this QR code that people can scan to see what's the how the produce has been planted and then transported.
Wow.
So,
Cool.
so that's that's one thing that they want to have they want to have a premium price, and they want the consumer to trust them.
Yeah.
But that QR code is probably just within their company, and the QR code probably contains information. Like how could you know? Like how could you know the QR code has the right information?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of like guessing. Like people are trying to understand and
Right.
making it more confusing. Like for every consumer, like okay, whose words
Yeah.
or whose product has the right property or the right
Mm.
what would you call it, like whose product is more premium, I guess.
Yeah.
um yeah, so I think it's always been an issue,
Mm.
and you know this technology or maybe other technologies could have a huge application in developing countries. Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. Because a lot of times these are exactly the growers that, um, need and want to be paid premiums in the market, but are often
Yeah.
discounted, in the value chain. And it's really interesting because I was working with a company once and like was
Uh-huh.
sharing a vision that I have about, everybody like who's a millennial Gen Z and has the opportunity in like Europe or the United States, they love going to farmers markets, right? And
Oh
like
yeah.
part of the like fun of going to a farmer's market is like the story of the farmer, and you like talk to the person who literally grew the food, and you understand like how they grew it, who they are, etc. But
Mm-hmm.
with today's technologies like blockchain, like video conferencing, I mean, you ostensibly could create a global approach to a farmer's market. Like you could go, like you said, to a supermarket, scan your pineapple or your banana or whatever, and like see that grower, right? Like what values they stand for, how they're growing, what practices they follow, etc. And then like even can live stream into them, you know.
Yeah.
Come and see their farm in practice. But anyway, this is like a crazy tech-enabled vision, a global farmers market. But I think blockchain is that, right? It's giving you that feeling of like, I'm supporting a farming system whose values align with mine. And I'm sure that in this like globally traded world that we live in, that it is, because it's validated on the blockchain, right? Is that kind of like one scenario? Like what
I agree with that. And also I think, you know, it's a very powerful tool, and a lot of people are experimenting with it, including like they want the small farmers, smaller producers to benefit from the global trading, or from you know, some companies even create digital tokens, just like a Bitcoin, or they call it farm coin or some other names, but they want the small producers to benefit from this whole system, and this is a powerful tool to enable them to do that, right? But also, like, I think here I want to point it out, we usually, like, you know, because farming itself is such a complicated work, and the global food supply chain is so complex. I think we at the same time we might need several different tools. Besides blockchain, there might be different or lower technology, or technologies that's not that advanced. But it takes time, and it takes steps for people and for markets to adopt that technology. So that just, you know, that kind of concludes that we want the two sets. We want to have many useful things that can create the goal, to reach the same goal. And I do believe that this type of technology could be adopted, and
Well, I think this is super interesting, and it transitions me to the next line of questions. So I think now we've covered like, what is blockchain? What are some potential uses? And I'm sure, and once this, you know, recording is released, like, I'm hoping it'll spark all kinds of conversations and people sharing examples from, you know, their parts of the world and their startups. But like, I want to shift now to like the practical, like, I'm an entrepreneur, I want to get involved blockchain, like, how do I do that? So let's start with that. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm in, you know, Brazil, and I want to get involved with blockchain. Like, where do I start? Are there like, you know, downloadable like, how do you actually, do you have to have like a degree in blockchain? What's the first
Well, you probably, if you don't know anything right now, you probably want to find a partner who understand writing, programming, and writing codes.
So there's not like
there's
not like a plug and play solution. Like, you do have to code it yourself, or is there like a
there's a lot for open source kind of I think there are websites that explains the whole process, and then build the infrastructure that you can use. But you know, to me, from a investor point, I don't think that's the key thing, because once it become a technology, it's an infrastructure, it's a utility, then if you can, you better leverage your knowledge and your experience to find what's the right application, instead of, okay, let's create something by yourself. So it's easier to find a partner and find a co-founder that can handle the technology side. And then for you, you know, the most critical thing is think through the whole, like, have the blueprint, right? Like, think through the whole process, and also finding the right angle to enter, especially the business model, right? Because at the end, somebody has to pay for it, like somebody has to use it. I know there are people who's, you know, they're doing, for example, their angle was international trading. Like, it's very specific. They know that from Southeast Asia, there's a lot of like fruits exporting, importing activities, and they want to help those kind of clients. So their blockchain application was very specific for international trades. It's the same thing like for the trade financing company, like they need to have expertise in terms of, working with banks, working with same exporter importer. Like if they build their application around that business model. So yeah, I think one thing, for if you're a entrepreneur and you're looking in this direction, you might want to do some research to solve a real problem. Who can benefit from this type of technology?
Yeah.
Especially when the technology is just you bring your toolbox and then you just don't fix the car or fix something.
Yeah.
First thing you saw, you don't fix it, but you go and ask the patients, oh, where it hurts, right? Like where you want to,
where's this pain point that?
Yeah, where's pain points and how would people pay for it?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Now, like in that vein, like what are the business models being used? It sounds like the cost of using blockchain would probably be captured more by like bigger companies or like people who really want to protect quality and integrity of food products and that type of thing. Or, I mean, do small players also invest in this? Yeah. Okay. Tell me the business models.
No, what you said was correct. Some people they think wine, different wine has a really high margin, like their price margin was really high, and then they want to do the authentication for wines. You see, that's one of the application that they found, and then the other ones, they want to go after coffee, they want to go after cotton, because like there are brands that want to have more sustainable branding, and they want to certify or they want to know that their cotton has been produced in an organic way or in a very specific way.
Values alignment kind of thing.
Yeah. So for those kind of application, you see they go after specific produce or specific kind of high high value produce.
Yeah.
I think that's the right angle to enter, because you always want to have the initial category or initial the cash, I want to say cash call, but you want to have something that you're good at, and then that it has the industry has a market for it. Thus, the buyer or the clients don't have to be big corporations.
Sure.
So it really depends on like what kind of angle that you want to enter.
And it's also like touching on another phenomenon that's happening kind of like in parallel to this like uptake of interest in more transparency across the supply chain, is also the kind of supply chain itself is, becoming a little bit more efficient, I guess, like the middle are being eliminated in many cases. And so again, this is like a very powerful tool to come in, and as that's happening, right, to empower growers, give the information to the buyers, and you kind of like eliminate all of the middle steps that previously were happening. Which is like, it's very, I mean, as you said, that's only in some cases, because in other cases, it is a super complex, global supply chain for agriculture, more complex than most people even realize. And, even like, again, like I've spent 20 plus years in this industry, and even like understanding, commodities, right? It's like, it's not just about the trade of the commodities itself, or even the farmer growing the commodities. It's even about like the production of the seeds. I mean, there's like a whole like
array
of like players along this that all need to be integrated, and sharing information with each other, etc. And as we're seeing in COVID, one piece of that goes away. You have like some massive disruption potential. So, and I mean disruption in this sense in a negative way, not in the like disrupt, what we're seeing with the fragility of our supply chains right now is like everything works just in time. And there's like a lot of loss in various parts of it because things aren't optimized. And I think blockchain can come in and do this. And then also digital tech, we're all empowered with our phones now to, be able to, again, like have these more direct supply chains than have ever been before possible. And we're seeing that with a number of our TFF teams there, pivoting from selling B2B to B2C, in the context of COVID. And that's, been really interesting. I think that's going to be a phenomenon that we're going to see more and more of going forward. So yeah, fascinating stuff. So back to the practical applications here. So find a co-founder, decide what your use case is with blockchain, and then develop your kind of like business model. And then, and then what? Like what's the way to pitch this? I mean, I guess it's a buzzword with investors and everything right now. You say AI, machine learning, blockchain. Tell me more. Right? Yeah.
Like people might be familiar with blockchain. A lot of the investors, they probably review so many cases. But once it goes into the industry, that's where the beauty is, because there's very few investors in the world that really understand agriculture and know the application in the industry, because it will be hard for them to expand their knowledge and then say, oh, they know a lot about the farming industry, for example. Right. So you still, it's a compelling story that you can tell, and you can craft your story that's really like rooted in the industry, the agriculture industry, because we've seen, technology has always been, it maybe started with the internet companies like Google or all the like digital methods that they're creating. But then technology slowly, they move into traditional industries. That's where its power got unleashed. And then that's when people really need education to understand how the traditional industry can fit in, or the other way around is how the technology could be applied to the traditional industry. So I think that it's still worth I think it's worth a chance. Especially when blockchain doesn't have to be a global network. Some company that they even have their own, it's a small regional or small like internal blockchain infrastructure. It's also doable. So we've seen that technology, not only they have to be applied to the industry specific, but they also sometimes it also benefits if they have local capacity. So localization is another great thing to discover. There are companies from New Zealand, Australia, from Singapore, China. They're probably doing something kind of similar, but they're serving very, very different markets. And in each different market, they might have different crops, they might have different produce and a different set of challenge that they're dealing with. So you really need the eye to see, where's the problem? Like, if even though you have the toolbox, it's cool, it's like a new toy, like it's very nice, very powerful. But like you need that real pinpoints, and at the enter point.
Are you seeing like businesses shift their behavior because of blockchain? Because it's like, oh, we could be exposed, or, like, are they getting better because of this technology creating more transparency? Or is it more just like an efficiency gain play that they're like, we're able to do this, reduce losses, like milk, for example, because we're optimizing sensor use? Or is it,
I think it's both. But, most of the people who adopt this type of technology, they're already advanced, or they're very confident about their practice, but they just need something to prove their efficiency or to prove or to have that proven track record that they're doing great job. But they still need some certain changes. Either it's like SOP or it's their internal, like, sometimes they need a new IoT, what is it called? Sometimes they might need new equipments and new practices. So that, like that change of procedure need to be like trained. But on the other side, like even though the company is good enough, and they might still need to change their internal protocol.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's super interesting. I was also just thinking, because we talked about like dairy, we talked about coffee, but like we talked about
wine,
and grain, to a certain extent, like the grain trade. But like I'm even thinking for like because this premiumization that we're talking about, like chocolate, for example, too, there's a lot of like supply chain interests that are about obviously taste and quality, but also just like really good practices, preventing child labor, right? And like destruction of forests and things like that. So I can definitely see too that there is probably going to be interest from like NGOs and like blockchain too, just to make sure that there's like there's like a compliance angle, there's a quality assurance angle, there's an efficiency angle, there's lots of different ways you can use this tool, right, for different purposes, which is really fascinating.
That's why like we also need to pay attention that the blockchain, once you're disclosing public, their operational data or some sensitive data, it's not everybody want to get into a blockchain or they don't want to leverage this technology. So we gotta be very careful, because there is like data safety issue or there's like some other concerns from the corporate from the company's viewpoints.
Well, meaning that they don't want to be exposed, or
no, like it just like people will have restricted access.
Okay.
So it's not like anyone, like they only show certain information that they can distribute to the public, but the rest should be only in a certain user group. It's basically, for example, if you're my supplier or if you're my distributor, you might have the access to add data, but you might not have the access to view the entire data sets on the chain.
Yeah. Okay, so that is a really important point that I want to transition to, which is around challenges. So I think like I'm sure that there's like a number of challenges, but one I guess is indeed this like privacy, kind of like governance of data.
Governance,
I'm guessing there's also some missing standards globally. Is that something that is a challenge, or?
Especially for agriculture industry, I think yes, you could say that, because we don't have a very unified, we don't use the way how we describe things might be different. The units might be different. Like the quality standards might be different. So especially in agriculture sector, not just for blockchain technology, but for any technology, when they want to gather the data sets, they always need to clean the data first. That's a unique challenge. I think it requires a lot of customization. So that's when you said, is there a golden standards? Like I don't think so. Like that's why like localization is very important. But the other challenge that I want to mention is actually the willingness to pay. Because agriculture is like, you buy a like cucumber, you buy a tomato, it's already, I wouldn't say it's very expensive, but still like you don't want to pay too much for.
We're used to pretty cheap food in the world.
So we need to be especially either the startup or the corporates, they all want to have some creative ways that they don't spend too much on new technology that wouldn't change their cost, so the cost is a very center issue, unless you see clear incentives that, like,
Yeah.
for example, if you're certifying your if you have authenticated wine,
Right.
and people are willing to pay more, then it's worth it, right? Like it worth to adopt this whole method. But if you're producing lettuce or producing spinach, like your cost of operational cost is already very high, and then you need to find another way to work with those type of farmers,
Yeah.
so they can apply, like otherwise, like
Yeah.
who would upload the data, or what kinds of data? You
Yeah.
probably need some IoT, the small sensors in the fields, and
Right.
that means cost too. So that's
Well,
another
that's where I
challenge.
think, yeah, that's where I think the business model side of this is really interesting because,
Mm-hmm.
like a couple of things jump to mind. One is indeed, like
Yeah.
you said, for crops or products that have a premium opportunity, such as wine, chocolate, coffee, etc. Like where people, they're used to buying from a particular area or region and understand, you know what I mean? Like the quality and value proposition for that. But for other types of crops, people aren't used to paying for that transparency in the supply chain. And I think that there's some really, like, potentially very cool business models that could emerge here. Maybe it's not the grower that's paying for the sensors in his field, but maybe the Walmart, right? Who then wants to sell the product to the consumer with a, hey, we're doing this because we're sequestering carbon or preserving water or biodiversity. And, and then the other angle, so that is another play on the premiumization of crops that haven't had premium opportunities before. But the third area that I think is interesting too is just like the efficiency gains. So if there is loss and spoilage, et cetera, along the supply chain because temperatures aren't controlled, or the field isn't optimized for growing, if it can help to solve that, then it's flipping it from being a cost to, you know what I mean, an actual like gain because you're reducing losses. So I think it requires coming in with some new mindsets, right? To like really find the value proposition for blockchain. And that's what's exciting is I think like entrepreneurs are the ones that are gonna, see some big opportunities here. And the other thing that, because at TFF, we're all about connecting unexpected dots to get to new insights. But I think what's interesting is to look at how blockchain is being used in other sectors and saying, oh, maybe that could work here. So for example, music, like digital rights management systems. I feel like I've seen some now uses, or at least read something somewhere about like how, seed, instead of enforcing patents or protections, like blockchain can come to bear in like protecting IP. Also, I could imagine for, a smallholder who has like a particular variety and things like this, like that they're sharing. I don't know. Like, I'm sure there's some super creative uses that we're not even thinking of. So I want to say, entrepreneurs, go look at what everybody else is doing and bring that into the bag and play around with it. Yeah.
I like the idea because it's called, like, I always call it cross-pollination.
Which is an agricultural term. Exactly.
Yeah. So, when you're really focused in the ag industry, you probably felt like, okay, this is, I don't see any opportunity, but if you're like, that's why, like, when people are looking at a financing option, insurance option, like, when they're thinking about other industries and how that might, how this could become a new collaboration efforts, and then there might be new opportunities as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think indeed. And I like also what you mentioned earlier about like farm coin, but we're actually like, you're hearing it here first, audience, but we're like exploring a TFF coin type of alternative currency, because in our ecosystem of entrepreneurs, a lot of us are like, and I'm including myself in this, by the way, but we're cash strapped, right? You know, we're like bootstrapping, trying to build our business, but we have, you know, other ways of delivering value to each other. So we're looking at like how something like a TFF coin could, you know, allow us to trade like services and knowledge, right? Without like a direct payment. And then you can have blockchain behind it to make sure that it's all like done on the app and everything. But I think like this is also going to be really exciting for the future of, you know,
that's interesting.
Yeah, well, I think everything's going to become more direct now, right? And thanks to digital technology, we're already seeing COVID do that. As I mentioned, like supply chains are becoming more straightforward, you know, and a lot more localized, et cetera, at least for now. But let's see how things progress. We're still like at the very beginning of this, you know, disruption in our lives. So yeah, fascinating. So let me just like ask you a couple of questions, like to kind of close this out. So, you know, smallholder farmers, because that's a large part of our community. How should they start to learn about blockchain? Like, are there, you know, is there a book or some resources or anything like that that you recommend? Set up a meeting with you.
How should I how should I put it this? I think everybody know their own situation. They're, you know, like they probably know what stage they are. They don't have to adopt this type of technology in order to stand out the game. There are a lot of different things, you know, like if you're small producer, and then you can implement something else, like for example, sticker, the very traditional or low tech methods. Yeah, you can go ahead and do that. Like I don't think it's a solution for all the problem that we have. Like if you're care about if you want to build the trust, maybe I encourage people to, you know, to still go have your own website and then start writing your own story and then communicate with consumers directly. You know, all those methods helps. But when you're seriously, you think this might benefit, or if you're an entrepreneur that start a startup that want to help others, then like I think there are, you know, technology itself is there for you to use. And it always matters, like it matters that how you use it. So I think the knowledge itself is not it's not like a super secretive thing that you can learn. It's actually very available. Like you can go online and I think everybody can Google search it. Besides China, I guess. And
you can say it
there. But you know, like I think the way is you need, everybody need to understand the basic concepts, and then once you have the understanding, you can see where you can bridge the gap, or where it comes handy. Like it comes handy when somebody, you know, if somebody wants to fool you, or somebody, it comes with a crazy idea, want your money or want your validation, then at least you have the basic understanding, and you know how to utilize it at the right moment, at the right timing. So that's my whole point. I think this is a I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting opportunity that worth explore and study and understand, and it comes handy.
Well, exactly. So if I'm like hearing you right, like it's kind of like one of those things, you don't have to jump right in with blockchain as your first solution. It might be that in your country market, it's literally about just even digitizing, you know,
exactly.
Like, you know, let's go from handwritten to actually inputting this into some type of digital tool like Excel or whatever. And then the next phase could be, you know, looking at a blockchain solution, you know, as you're scaling, etc. So I think that's really important, is like, you don't have to jump right into blockchain. There, you know, we have been keeping digital records for a long time, and this is a way to like improve that whole process. And like you said, improve the accuracy and efficiency and all of of things. So very, very cool. Well, I would definitely, you know, encourage, you know, our, viewers to also check out some of the stuff that we have in our TFF digital labs about blockchain. We have some nice intro material, but I think that, this is a space where, like a lot of stuff in TFF, we have more to learn from the entrepreneurs than they have to learn from us. And that's actually why we set up our program the way it is like, the digital natives of today's world, millennials and Gen Zs, like they inherently get this in a way that, incumbents and people like me who are like old and, entrenched in the industry, like we want to learn from everybody else. So I guess that's like how I'd love to round it out is like, please, stay in touch with us about all of the stuff that you're working on and also like the updates from the investor side. And then to all of the, innovators and entrepreneurs who are watching, please do share back with us your, ideas that have been cross-pollinated from other sectors and your experiments with, using digital approaches to supply chain and also to, stepping into the blockchain opportunity. But it's been such a pleasure to talk with you today. And I'd love to, say that we should keep this conversation going in the future as, we're gaining more and more experience in this. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Christine.
Yeah.